99X and the Morning X. Barnes and Leslie, you heard the big announcement on Monday. David Lowery from Cracker and Camper Van Beethoven fame is playing our party. What are those deets, Fram? That's free, all ages.
Yeah, it's this weekend. We're going to be at Mutation Brew, Broswell Road, just north of 285, 1 to 6, with David Lowery. It's our Rebirth 99X big 1-year anniversary. Rebirth, actually.
So David is here. He was here on Monday, and he's back again because we wanted to have a proper chit-chat. We talked about you being at UGA. Is that your full-time gig?
Well, so that's my full-time gig. I mean, it works well with, being in a legacy, still performing a 90s alternative rock band, because we mostly play on weekends in the summers and around the holidays, generally. So it works pretty good with that. So yeah, that's what I do.
What do you teach at UGA?
I teach in the business college. I teach economics and finance and music business. I teach music licensing and publishing, and I do an intro class. It's kind of fun because we just kind of wing it. I have a little bit of a stand-up comedy sort of style of lecturing for that class, so there's lots of humorous slides and stuff like that throughout that class. So,
I love that. We have smart listeners, and we have smart rock stars.
Yes, Professor Lowery's on with us.
Yes, a lot of people don't know this. I have a doctorate, so...
Wow.
Yeah.
Good on you.
What I love is what a proponent you've been for artists' rights throughout the years. I mean, really one of the more vocal artists out there, seriously. And I know so many musicians and songwriters have you to thank. I mean, talking from anywhere from Pandora to Spotify. Have things gotten any better? Because, when I talk to a lot of the artists that I know or songwriters, it really hasn't.
It hasn't. There's some progress here and there. Part of it was I launched 2 class actions against the streaming services.
I remember.
So that resulted not just in a settlement, but in a revision of the Copyright Act and how they calculate royalties in the digital realm. And that did help produce some improvements. It wasn't one thing that got us into this, and it's not one thing that's going to get us out. It's a long road back, but there's been some progress over the years, and certain of the streaming services, I'm not going to name them, but certain of the streaming services have a more pro-artist attitude than others, and that helps.
How do you keep up with all that? So with like Cracker and Camper Van Beethoven and all the things that are streaming everywhere, I know you have probably people or lawyers or whatever, but how does that work dumb it down for Professor, for the people like me and Leslie and whoever's listening? How does that work when you're a famous musician and you have all this money floating out in space, whether it's small or big? How does it get to you?
3 sources of revenue. One usually comes from your record label or distributor. You just got to make sure they're doing their job. The second one comes from BMI ASCAP, or as for being a songwriter, BMI ASCAP CSAC for being a songwriter. You got to make sure they're doing their job. You have to look at their reports and just go through the line details, make sure nothing's missing. And then finally, there's something called the mechanical royalty, which has become quite important in the digital age because it's on streaming as well. That's a federal institution that collects that, and it's pretty messy right now. So they're in my I don't want to say they're a target, but I'm looking at you. I got eyes on you, right? So,
but all 3 of the things you said, you put an addendum on each of them. Basically, you have to be watching every move, which sucks.
Yes, it does suck, but that's why most artists have a manager. But I'm pretty deep in this, so I actually just do it directly myself because there's basically I know how you do it, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's what I teach also.
Very cool.
So we go through that with my students in quite detail, and I introduce them to all of these things that then help them, if they become musicians or managers, helps them audit these services.
I have to ask because you are Professor David Lowery on with us from Cracker, Camper Van Beethoven. Let's talk AI. Do you talk about that at all in your class? Because it's the wild, wild west right now.
Yeah, so I just signed on to support proposed legislation No AI Fraud Act is, I think, what the name they finally settled on. I'm not the perfect spokesperson for this, but you know how football players in college now have sort of these name, image, and likeness rights, and they can sell those and make money from that and stuff like that. That's a right of publicity. Essentially, what the problem with AI is that there's no one overarching federal law. It's a sort of a patchwork of state laws. Some states don't do anything about it, but effectively, the AI threat that's on the horizon is like people essentially taking your voice and image and then putting out music that's like, hey, we created an AI of Camper Van Beethoven. Why anybody would want to do that? And we have this new Camper Van Beethoven music that we created. That's really trading on our band's trademark, but also, sort of a right of publicity, basically. And that just doesn't seem fair. It doesn't feel like just random free writers should be able to make money off of that. So we're hoping to to federalize that concept. And a lot of big companies don't want that done. And then, a lot of artists want that done. People who really have the most problem are voice actors who do your commercials, spots for television, stuff like that. They're getting ripped off left and right. My bass player, Brian Howard, is a voice actor, and many of his friends believe they've been cloned. Somebody hired them to do a project, and then now there's this AI voice out there that sounds an awful lot like the person, that they used, right? And
it's easy to do. It's super easy.
Yeah.
David, I have to ask you a question, because do you think it's easier now to be an artist, or back when you were an artist, it was about, you get in the van or you get in the bus and you just, you tour. Now there's so much more. Is it easier now or more confusing and overwhelming?
It's easier to get your music out there. It's harder to get paid. Yeah. There's also the other problem of, we used to have you essentially had gatekeepers that you had to get through. You had to get that program director at 99X to like your song and play it, right? Those gatekeepers. Now the gatekeeper is called I think a lot of people call it the tyranny of choice. Yeah. Which is you have so much stuff out there, you don't know where to start. And, you're either counting on an algorithm or an influencer or just something random to happen to break you through. Still, though, the best way, as always, to promote your music is touring or in real life experiences that are direct with your fans. Because the more people you have out there that love you, that are posting stuff on social media or doing whatever, help triggering the algorithms, the better it is. So it's harder to get paid, easier to get your music out there in some ways.
Well, what do you think? I think this weekend, instead of you playing, let's just do a lecture.
Yeah, I think so too.
This.
Forget it. This is awesome. I'm learning.
At the brew, you just get a beer. We're going to have David Lowery talk about the music business.
That's right.
That'd be excellent.
Yeah, you're allowed to take notes, and there's a quiz at the end. So,
there will be a lot of beer. The 99 Experiment is the name of the beer we're launching this Saturday, February 3rd, 1 to 6. David Lowery going to play Cracker songs, Camper Van Beethoven songs, and maybe a little lecturing over in Sandy Springs.
Yeah, no, hopefully not, but yes.
Okay.
It does happen sometimes.
Professor, the last question in class. When a song gets played on the radio, how much money does an artist actually get every time you hear that song?
Depends. Well, for me, it depends how big the audience is for the radio station.
Oh, huge. So we're talking 40 or 50 people at this point.
You're talking probably 40 or 50 grand.
Each time? Because I'm about to play Teen Angst, so I want to know from this playing, how much will you receive?
I'd have to. I don't know. Sure, you want to tell me really how many people listen to 99X?
I just told you.
40 to 50 people.
Yeah.
It's going to be a percentage of the advertising revenue. So it might be $1 or something like that.
Well, consider this a gift from us to you. Here comes $1. All right.
Okay, thank you.
We'll get into it more this weekend. David, again, thank you for playing our party.
Yeah, we're big fans, David. Thank you.
Thank you. No problem.
It's going to be a fun time. We'll see you in Sandy Springs this Saturday, 1 to 6. This is one of his bands, Cracker. It's Teen Angst.
Okay, appreciate it.
This is 99X.